and welcome. Today we're going to talk about cutting your fabric. Yep, for some people you're going, okay, what's the big deal? Others, oh my gosh, taking a rotary cutter to your beautiful fabric you just purchased makes you a little nervous. So no worries, if that's you, this video is for you. And you know what? As I was preparing for this video, I even learned a thing or two that I hadn't been, taught, because a lot of what I do, I'm self-taught. So if you're wanting to know the best way to do your cutting, stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Haney and I love quilting, which is why I'm here with you today, because I want to share my love of quilting with you. I was blessed with a mother that did a ton of sewing, a grandmother that did lots of needlework and handwork, and those skills and interests were passed down to me. And I realize in this day and age that is getting a lot, fewer and far between. So I'm here to be, I don't want to say that. I don't want to be your grandmother, but I'm going to be that great, young, great-looking aunt that's going to teach you how to quilt. So stay tuned and we're going to get you started here. Okay, fabric. You brought your fabric home from the store and now your pattern says cut it. Few things to note. A lot of times they will talk about the selvage. Here's your selvage. Usually it is the white line. Now, on batiks, a lot of time it won't have a white line, but you'll be able to tell. Usually you can just look at it and there's little dots. You'll be able to tell. Key thing to note when people are talking about the bias versus, the selvage versus the cross grain. This is the selvage. If you were to go into your middle of your fabric and tug on it, it's not going to stretch. But if you flip it the other way, which is your cross grain, here, let me show you the pretty side of the fabric. The cross grain, if you tug on that a little bit, it's got some give to it. Granted, it doesn't stretch a lot, but there's give there versus the other. So when you're starting to quilt and they say cut the width of fabric, what they mean you need to do is put your two selvage ends, there's one, there's your other, together to get the width of the fabric, which for most fabrics is about 42 inches total. So, key thing is we're going to match up the corners, and then what I do is I just slide my middle finger in between, and then I get to the other end. And I get it, if you're dealing with a huge piece of fabric, this is going to be a little trickier. But most of us are dealing with probably a yard of fabric or so. And then I get the other end, and we kind of straighten it up. Now, it's going to be a little hard to tell on the camera here, but I'm going to kind of try and lift this up so you can see. You're going to want to look at the bottom, and you need to make sure, a little tricky, you need to want to make sure that bottom is nice and smooth and there's no kind of curves in it. And if it's really off, you're going to see it. You really are. So the biggest thing is, if you need to, as I said, you get your fingers, you get your fingers in between your selvages on both ends, and you just shift it a little until it's nice and smooth and that there's no little curves in your fabric. And you know what? What that often means is your edges aren't even, which is why we need to trim it up. So there's the key thing to note, is that your edges more than likely won't be even once you get this squared up, which is fine. So you got that done, and then lay it down on your cutting board. And kind of just press it out. It should lay nice and flat. Now, we see here is that this one definitely isn't squared. We got about, a quarter inch or so of the back showing through because it's not completely straight with the front. That is fine. That is to be expected. So I like to put the folded end of the fabric towards me. And then we're going to take our 6 by 24 inch ruler And if you have a different set of rulers, that's fine. Use your long ruler. Key thing, you need a ruler long enough that is more than 22 inches, 21 inches, sorry, more than 21 inches, because this needs to cover from top to bottom the full width of your fabric. That is critical. If you don't have that type of ruler, go out and get one. I recommend this one, which is the Omni Grip 6 by 24 inch. So we're going to take that ruler and we're going to put it on the edge. And here's what I learned, because I made the mistake of, I used to do this on the right hand side of the fabric. And then I'd straighten it and then I'd flip it over and then I'd do my cutting. Well, I'm moving the fabric after I've squared it up, which is going to give me a chance of not having quite so square. So here's where your other ruler comes in that I mentioned that you needed in the last video, the basics of quilting tools. This is a 6.5 by 6.5 inch square. Now, if you have one 4.5 by 4, 5.5 by 5, that's fine. Biggest thing is you just need another ruler. Because what we're going to do is we want to keep the big long ruler to the left. Put that a little bit over to the left, but we want to make sure this other square ruler is on the right side, and that is going to be lined up at the bottom of the fabric on your fold line, which we've ensured is straight. And that way you've got a reasonable distance where you've tied it with a straight edge. And then we just move that a little bit over to the left, and then we butt our straight ruler up against it. And I don't want to lose too much of my fabric, so I'm going to just shove it over a tad so I can trim off the least amount of fabric and still square up my edges. Okay, so I think we're looking pretty good here. Okay, so I've got my 6.5 inch square. I have a line at the bottom. It's even with the fold line. It's nice and solid, and now I've butted my long ruler up against it. And I even make sure my fabric is even there. Now, I move the 6.5 inch ruler, leaving only my long ruler in place. I take my handy dandy rotary cutter and I put my fingers on the long ruler at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, and as I'm cutting, I'm going to just kind of lift and move my fingers up above. I get it. This takes a little bit of practice so that you're not accidentally moving the ruler. And guess what? Even I have a tendency once in a while to go, oops, and my ruler slipped. If that happens, you just get this 6.5 inch ruler out again, and you put it down at the bottom, and you square it up again. It's not a big deal. It's gonna happen. You just need to practice. All right, so here we go. So I'm starting at the bottom. Nice, even pressure. Move my hands. Move my hands. Move my hands. And I can actually feel that I need to change my rotary cutter blade. I could kind of hear it catching. Okay, so I'm going to move my ruler. And now, hopefully, yep, my blade definitely needs to replace, because what happened is it caught. It didn't fully cut through the fabric. That's okay. I just go in there and just catch that one. Oh, there we go. I got lucky. It was only one. Okay, so excuse me. I only trimmed off a very little amount, but I now have a very straight edge. So now I'm ready to start cutting my strips. So then we can just put our ruler up against it, because now we have an accurate straight line on the left to match with my ruler. So usually a 2.5 inch strip is often pretty common that we're going to work with, so that's what I'm going to cut today so that I can use this fabric for something later. Okay, so I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line up a straight line on the fold again, and then I'm going to line the vertical line the vertical line up with 2.5 inches on my straight line, and I should be able to cut. Now, here's a little trick. Here's where your painter tape comes into play. When you're needing to cut a lot of strips at the same time, if you're a little OCD, AD, whatever, like me once in a while, and you double and triple check every time you do it, because you know if you don't, oh, dang, that was 2.25. Oh, dang, that was 3. And you mess up, you just take your little painter's tape, and we're going to just put a little piece right to the left. You don't want to put it on the line because you need that line visible so that you can match it up with the straight edge of the fabric. But now you've got your tape there that says, oh, that's my 2.5 right there to the right of that blue painter's tape. That really helps. And then you can very quickly move this. So I'm lined up at my bottom. I'm lined up on the vertical. And now I'm going to cut, move, cut, move. Yep. And I know I need to go switch my blade on that ruler. Oh, there we go. There's my 2.5 inch strip. Woohoo! Very nice. Now you go do it again. And because I have this blue tape there, I can very quickly position my ruler on the bottom, on the edge, and I'm ready to go. Now, here's the deal. It's going to happen. And it's the way it is. The fold at the bottom, as straight as it is, after you cut a few strips, what happens is you'll notice this is a good one, this is nice and straight, but after a few cuts, 2-3 strips, open up your strip and look at the middle. If it looks like your middle's got a little bit of a curve in it, it's time to re-straighten your fabric. So just go back, do a little adjustment, maybe refold it, re-put it out, and then go back and get your 6.5 inch square, butt it up at the bottom, redo the edge, just cut off, you should only have to trim off a little bit, 1/8 of an inch, no more than 1/4 inch, and trim it up again to get a straight edge. That way, as you cut more and more strips, you're going to continue to get a nice straight piece of fabric, even in the curve of the middle of the fold line. The key things were always cut on the left. Now, if you're a lefty, this is going to be totally opposite. So you're going to trim from the right side of the fabric. You're going to just do opposite because you're going to have the rotary cutter in your left hand. That's the biggest thing. So everybody else, righties, you're going to trim your fabric on the left side of the fabric. Painter tapes works wonderfully. Make sure you apply enough pressure to your ruler as you're cutting so it doesn't slip, and then just slowly move your hand up. Don't slide it. I just find having my fingers, lifting them up and moving it, does it well, because otherwise you're going to shift that ruler. The other thing is, make sure your fabric and your table space where you're cutting, you have enough space for this long ruler that it's not off the edge of your table. If it is, you're just an accident waiting to happen. A slip with a rotary cutter, you're not going to get it straight. So shift your fabric to the right so that your ruler can fully be flat on a table. I think there we have it. Oh, and as you noticed, I commented a few times, I could feel more than anything, a little bit of a catch in my rotary blade. And I'll admit, sometimes I don't change them as often as I should. Change them. Change them, and that way you know you're always cutting with a nice crisp blade, sharp blade, and then you won't have to go back and trim those little things that got caught and didn't work. What I do is I have these blades from Olfa come in a nice plastic container. Of course, I don't have one handy here. They come in nice little containers. And so what I do is I take a black magic marker and write on one of them, old. And then as I'm done with the blade, I put it in the old container. Because, well, Every once in a while, you want to use your rotary cutter to cut something really crappy that you really shouldn't be cutting with your good cutter. Go grab one of those old blades. I've cut paper, cardboard, carpet, and it's nice to know I've got an old blade that I can throw in here if I need. So there you have it. Now you have the confidence to go out there and start cutting your fabric to get ready to make your quilt. Take care. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to stay up to date with all the new stuff I'm dropping, subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell icon. That way you'll be notified anytime I drop a new video into the channel. I'll be posting new videos every Friday morning with lots of great stuff that you aren't going to want to miss. I also would love to have you join me in my Facebook group. I have a private Facebook group that we're sharing things about life that I love. Quilting, needlework, machine embroidery, wine, books, a lot of fun stuff. So I'd love to have you join me over there. You can find it at facebook.com/group/lifefulfilled. I also can be found at the normal ways, Pinterest, Instagram, etc. You can find in the description below all the links of the places to find me, including wendyjhaney.com. If you found this video helpful, I would love to have you give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment, let me know what you'd like to see. Take care, and thanks for watching.